Hey guys, Kelade here. Patch 7.2.5 is pretty much confirmed by Blizzard to come out on the next reset week. So that's either going to be Tuesday the 13th or Wednesday the 14th if you're on EU. So with that being said, there's going to be a lot of changes to our gear, especially because Wrath of Souls will no longer be used, and also with the raid Tomb of Sargeras opening the next week on both normal and heroic, and then mythic the week afterwards. Let's take a look at all the different pieces of gear that you can get from that and how tier 19 and tier 20 stacks up. So in this video, we're going to cover the best trinkets that you're going to be able to use day one of patch 7.2.5, and then also the best trinkets that you're going to get once Tomb of Sargeras opens up. And of course, we're going to look at tier 19 versus tier 20, what's the best switch between both of those tiers, and we'll also look at potential stat weight changes and how things might get affected. I think a lot of people have questions about the relative strength of crit. So first, we have the trinket sims. Now, this is simming pretty much every single trinket that you can currently have, that you can currently go out and get on the live servers, right? So this is day one, the instant patch 7.2.5 hits. What are the relatively values of the trinkets that we can have? It's essentially running every single trinket that we can currently get, including all the world bosses, namely Arcano Crystal, all of the Mythic Plus bosses, including Kara and Cathedral of the Eternal Night, and all of the raids, including Emerald Nightmare, Trial of Valor, and the Nighthold. So the current sims are running from 880 eye levels version of each trinket to 925 versions of the same trinket, and there's all the 5 different eye levels in between. I'll provide a link to this entire list for you guys so you guys can go and check out and see how your trinkets rack up. But of course, the best way for you to figure out the relative strength of your trinkets and what trinkets you have is really for you to sim your own trinkets. But as a reference, here's a list of how strong the trinkets are. As you can see, obviously at the top, you're going to have a 925 Arcane Crystal at the very highest. Now, what's surprising here is how strong Ursox and Reigning Paw is right here in third place, right? It's between a 915 Arcane Crystal and a 920 Arcane Crystal. Now, all of these trinkets are simmed all with a 910 Convergence of Fates. Essentially, since Blizzard nerfed Wrath of Souls, but they didn't touch Convergence of Fates, so Convergence of Fates is actually our best trinket, whether it's live right now, once patch 7.2.5 hits, and it'll still be the best trinket once Tomb of Sargeras opens up. So if you guys don't have a Convergence of Fates yet, try to convince your guild to still go pack and kill Elisan until you get one. But with that being said, so all these trinkets are in the second slot, with the first slot being Convergence of Fates. Right, so you can see Arcano Crystals up here, Ursox, Reigning Paw, Chaos Talisman comes up really highly. Infernal Machine from Cathedral of Eternal Night actually ranks pretty highly here because it is a haste trinket. And you guys will see later on, haste does have really good value, especially once we get into the tier 20 pieces too. Some more Arcano Crystals, Chaos Talisman again, Ursox, Reigning Paw, Arcano Crystals, Infernal Machine, Chronal Shard makes it onto the list for the first time. So feel free to take a look at this and dig into it deeper. But as you guys can see, every single trinket that you can possibly get your hands on currently that gives you some sort of DPS in Legion is on here. So you guys can compare all the different eye levels and all the different trinkets. Now what's interesting is that if you guys scroll all the way down, you guys can find poor old Wrath of Souls at the very bottom here of the list, DOS. Even an 880 spike counterweight beats a 925 Wrath of Souls. So regardless of the eye level of your Wrath of Souls, even if you have a 925 Wrath of Souls, you're very likely going to be taking that off and putting on any trinket, assuming that it's at least 880 eye level, regardless of what trinket it is. Now that was day one of patch 7.2.5 trinkets. Let's look at what happens once you're able to step into Tomb of Sargeras and able to acquire trinkets from the raid itself. This is the sims running with some of the top trinkets that you guys saw in the previous list, where you have, Arcano Crystal, Chaos Talisman, Chrono Shard, and Ursox Reigning Paw. We've added those 4 trinkets along with every single DPS trinket that you can get your hands on in Tomb of Sargeras. So in the first slot, I have a 910 Convergence of Fates, and as far as for all of these trinkets that I'm adding, I set all their eye levels to be 910 in comparison, right? So you're looking at the 910 versions of every single trinket and how they line up. The reason why I picked 910 eye level is because it's an achievable eye level that you can currently get on live. Also, it's the highest base eye level normal Tomb of Sargeras loot that you can get, and it's also the highest base mythic eye level that you can get from the Nighthold. It's a relatively safe eye level from when people are switching from one raid to the next or from one patch to the next. So of course, we're going to have Arcano Crystal at the top with Convergence. If you can get your hands on a 910 Arcano Crystal, you're good to go. If you guys have nether shards and you guys don't know what to spend it on, I highly recommend you guys try to get as high eye level of an Arcano Crystal as you guys can. I'll of course include links to all these lists down in the comments below, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at what trinkets you guys should be aiming for from Tumor Sargeras if you don't have any of the other trinkets that are higher on the list, right? So Cradle looks like it's going to be good with Spectre, but both of those are kind of gimmicky trinkets in that for Cradle to get 100% uptime on the trinket, you have to not drop below 50% HP. For Spectre, you kind of need to not move the boss at all. If you guys have seen my last video where I go into what Spectre does, once you place it on the ground, you don't really want to move the boss away. So if it's a fight where literally the boss never moves, your HP never drops below 50%, these two trinkets are great. But there are trinkets, of course, on here that don't always rely on that. Essentially, I think the biggest takeaway from here is how strong some of the quote-unquote stat sticks are on here, right? So you have Arcano Crystal, obviously at the top. And when you see the words Chain Haste, that's just a haste stat stick, or Chain Mastery, that's a mastery stat stick. You can get it from Trainer of Valor, which is a trinket that Odin drops in Trial of Valor. It's surprisingly good how good these stat sticks are. So take a look at this list. If you have anything on there, that's great. If not, here are the things that you guys can aim for when you guys are looking for gear. So initially, I simmed this with helmet and pants, so that's why you guys see the initials H and P in the beginning of these sims. But after simming my character some more, I realized that for some people, your helmet and cloak might be the best legendary combo for you. So here is also the same sims, but instead of using the helmet and the legendary pants, I'm using the helmet and the legendary cloak. So it's very similar results. Essentially all of this haste related trinkets are going to be at the top. Of course, our Arcano Crystal is always at the top, but there is a really good amount of haste trinkets that are up here. Even now, you guys can get started on your trinkets, right? Your Chaos Talismans are looking still really, really good. Unfortunately, just like Arcano Crystal, you can't really farm Chaos Talisman because it comes from by the hold and there's no Mythic Plus version of that. You're really going to get a high eye level Chaos Talisman just from your Mythic Plus weekly chests. So hopefully you can get a good eye level from that, or of course you can always get the trinket from the relinquished tokens that give you trinkets. So I highly recommend you guys, as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you have nether shards to spend it on the trinkets, because you're definitely going to want an Arcano Crystal and Chaos Talisman if you can get your hands on one. Speaking of legendaries, let's take a look at how some of the different legendaries stack for single target DPS in a 5-minute fight. So I picked out some of the best single target legendaries that we currently have, which includes the helmet, the cloak, the legendary pants, the massacre ring, the crafted belt, right? So I put them all together, some different variations of them, and with tier 20. Now, surprisingly enough, I initially thought the helmet and pants would win out since it seemed like we'd be generating so much rage. Our enraged uptime would get higher with it, and that is in fact the case. The legendary helmet and the legendary pants right now give me around 83% enraged uptime, whereas the helmet and the cloak gives me around 80 to 81% enraged uptime. So the pants does give you a little bit more enraged uptime, but unfortunately, of course, the pants becomes absolutely useless once you hit execute phase. Now that we're not going to use a 4-piece tier 19, our execute phase is going to feel a little bit lackluster. Since we don't have as easy of a way of getting our Bloodthirst crit anymore, our execute phases won't feel as great. So any help that we can get in improving that execute damage by way of the cloak definitely helps. I think the biggest takeaway from this legendary sim is just how strong the helmet still is, right? Essentially, the helmet is still going to be your best in slot legendary, and depending on how your gear is set up, you might want to use the cloak and pants, depending on what off pieces you have too, what you can change it with. But definitely, it looks like the value of cloak has definitely gone up with tier 20 because their tier 20 cloak actually is not that strong. So if we look at the tier 20 cloak stats, it's got crit on it, which essentially makes it bad. Any gear that has crit on it is not going to be great. And that's what the legendary cloak replaces, right? It replaces a cloak that has crit on it, whereas the tier pants actually doesn't have that same issue. The tier pants has versatility and mastery, right? Both stats that are higher ranked and gives us more DPS than crit does. Okay, so now let's look at the difference in DPS between tier 19 versus tier 20. On the left, you have your legendary helmet and legendary pants with the tier 20, and on the right, you have your legendary helmet and your legendary cloak with tier 20. So of course, since the left side uses the helmet and the legendary pants, you're going to be using the tier cloak, and since the right side uses the helmet and the legendary cloak, you're going to be using the tier pants, right? So that's what the difference here in DPS between the two different views. So this way, depending on which legendary you guys have, if you don't have the legendary cloak, but you somehow have the legendary pants, you guys can use the thing on the left side to make your gearing decisions. Basically, what I wanted to show you guys is how weak tier 19 is, right? If you can see, in both sims, tier 19 is at the very bottom. Of course, tier 20 is at the top. If you have all 4 set pieces of tier 20, put that on, you'll be doing great DPS. Now, all of these roles roles that you guys see in between 4-piece tier 19 and 4-piece tier 20 is kind of mix and matching 2 pieces of each. So we're going to be wearing 2-piece tier 19 and 2-piece tier 20. So just to help you guys kind of dig it out, B stands for back, H stands for helmet, S stands for shoulder, C stands for chest, and lastly L stands for leg. So there's 5 pieces of gear because the legendaries kind of shift which tier pieces you can use. But what you guys really want to pay attention to is on the very end of these, after 2-piece tier 20, the set pieces that I wear. So in both of this, it's very, very similar in that the C comes out at the top for all of these, right? So the chest. The tier 20 chest is really well itemized. It's got haste and mastery, our 2 best stats on it. So as soon as you can, if you can get your hands on a tier 20 chest piece, that's what you're going to want to go for. And then of course after that, you're going to want to go for the shoulders. The shoulders are also really nice itemized with high value haste and then some versatility. Still really good stats. So essentially if you guys can, you want to be upgrading your chest and your shoulders as your tier 20. Get those 2 pieces first if you have to choose between all the different tiers. And lastly, let's look at the stat weights a little bit because I know a lot of people have questions about what the value of crit is once you put on the legendary pants, right? So these sims are running legendary helmet, legendary pants, 4-piece tier 20, Conversion of Fates, Arcano Crystal, both 910 eye levels. Essentially everything that I say here is 910 eye levels with the legendaries being 940. Right here on this box right here, you guys can see the skill factors for my character. You guys can see my haste values, my mastery values, my versatility values, strength, and crit. So with the legendary helmet and the pants and with the 4-piece, your stat weights don't change that much from before patch 7.25, right? It's pretty similar to what we had at 7.2. Now, of course, haste is slightly more value now than before, right? You have haste normalized value at 1.3, mastery at 1.26, versatility at 1.13, strength at 1.0, and crit 0.97, a little bit under strength. So essentially for my character with this type of gear, my ranking is haste, mastery, and then versatility, and then strength and crit is kind of even, with crit still being the worst stat that we have. Now, of course, crit isn't horrible to have, but it has not gotten ahead of any other stat. It's technically still our worst stat. So now without the pants, let's kind of look at our stat weights too, right? See if crit has dropped any or what else happens, right? So instead of wearing the legendary pants, let's put on the legendary cloak instead. Same thing with the 4-piece tier 20, Conversion of Fates, Arcano Crystal. Let's see what we have here. So there's a huge jump if you have the legendary helmet and the legendary cloak and the value of haste for my character. I think this is mainly because I don't have the pants anymore. My enrage uptime has gone down, so SimC is telling me to get more haste in order to increase my enrage uptime. That's why you guys see haste so highly valued here at 1.65 normalized stat weights, right? So you have haste here, you have mastery at 1.18, versatility at 1.1, strength at 1, and then crit at 0.97. Essentially still the same, right? You're gonna have haste as the most valuable stat, and then you have mastery, and then versatility, and then strength and crit at the end. And that's why in these earlier sims, you guys see such a dominance of haste-related trinkets, right? So anything that can give us a lot of haste is gonna be really good. We're definitely gonna want as much haste as we can now since our enrage uptime has gone down. And in order to bump that enrage uptime up, the best thing to do is get more haste. Now, I hope that was helpful for you guys in trying to figure out what gear you should be wearing the instant patch 7.2.5 comes out, and also what gear you should be going for even when 2 more star gears comes out. And of course, like I mentioned, the links for these sims will be down in the description below. Let me know what you guys think about the video. Feel free to subscribe to see more content, and if you guys want, you guys can drop by on my Discord. Links to that is also down below. See ya!